This video is going to go over getting started in Illustrator. So we're going to kind of walk our way through it. I do have an attached file, so if you would like to follow along with me, you are more than welcome to. Whenever you open up Illustrator, I want you to be aware that yours is possibly going to look a little different than mine. So depending on the version that you have, it's going to change some of the layout right in here. But also, if you've never used Illustrator before, you're not going to have anything under your recents. It's just going to be a large black area, and that's completely okay. That's just that you haven't done anything in it yet, and yours will start popping up soon enough. Now, if you've ever worked in any of the other Adobe programs, you're going to notice that it kind of has the same feel to it whenever you open up this home screen. On the left-hand side, you're going to have new file where you can create new files, and I'll go ahead and just kind of click in there. Again, if you haven't worked in Illustrator, you're not going to have anything under recent. That's completely okay. But it comes in handy once you start working in Illustrator quite a bit. If you're creating the same type of files, let's say you're working on a project where you're creating a lot of posters, you won't have to keep recreating that size file. It will just put it in here for you and you can use it from there. Now, you do have some other saved ones in here. So saved will be once you if you created that poster file and you wanted to save it for future use, you can do that. That would be right in there. But you do have some templates under mobile. You can see some iPhones, web, print. These are common print sizes. So like your letters, your poster size, your legal paper. You have film and video. You have art and illustration. So here's where you're going to find like your postcards, your posters, and then you have some free templates. Okay. Now, if you do have your own version of Adobe Cloud, you will have access to Adobe Stock. Some of these templates down here are available to anybody with Illustrator. Some of them you do have to have Adobe Stock with them, just so that you know. Now, in this program, we do a lot with text. So it automatically sets you to points. All you have to do is do a drop down right here and change it to inches. It's a little bit easier for most people to understand. You can then go in and type in the size paper that you want it, whether or not you want it to be horizontal and vertical, how many artboards you have or that you need. We are going to be talking about these as we keep going along, and I'll show you an example in just a second. You have where you can set your bleeds, your color modes. You can pull in raster images, so Photoshop type of images, JPEGs. You can come down here and change it. If you're going to be doing print, I always highly suggest that you do high at 300. If it's something that you're going to be leaving on a screen and showing digitally, you can leave it at 72. Okay, and then you're going to hit create and it would create a new document for you. We're going to use the document that I'm providing. So I'm going to hit close and then proceed over here to the left-hand side again. Open is where we're going to go in just a second. But first, let me point out there is home to bring you back to this area. There is also learn. So if you need to look at any templates or I'm sorry, any tutorials outside of what we're doing here, that's where you would find them at. You then have your files shared with you and anything that's deleted. For my use, it says files will be permanently deleted after 30 days. I believe that's anything that you've shared in your Creative Cloud, but I'm not positive. I never use it through here. Okay, so we're going to come back up here to home, and then I'm going to go to open and open up that document that I provided. Now, in this, what it has in it is multiple artboards. So whenever you're working in Illustrator, you have to think of kind of like a sheet of paper. So you could have one sheet of paper that you're drawing on, you're doing your artwork on, or you could have, on this example, there's 9. Okay, so a good example of like a working time that you could be doing this is if you had to design something for a company and you're designing the logo, you're designing the letterhead for their papers, you're designing a business card for them, 3 different sizes. You could have 3 different size artboards all on the same workspace and the same document. And that would allow you to pull from one to the next or copy or duplicate from one to the next, and it all stays in that same area. So it just comes in really handy to have something like artboards if you're working on a project that's a little bit larger. For this one, I wanted to show you multiple aspects of Illustrator, so we have multiple artboards that kind of touch on those different things. Okay. So first of all, I want everybody to go up to the top to Window and go to Workspace and go to Essentials Classic. Essentials Classic seems to fit a little bit better. It has a little bit of everything in it. You do have these different workspaces, just like you do in any Adobe program, that focus on very specific things. So if you know you're going to be doing a lot with text, you can do typography or printing and proofing sometimes has a little bit more in that area. Typography is going to have a lot more to do with the fonts and the text. If you're doing a little bit more illustration, artwork kind of thing, you might want to go under painting. Essentials is good, but it's just a very base workspace. That's why I like Essentials Classic a little bit more. It gives you a little bit more right there on your screen. And then if your screen doesn't look like mine does, I want you to go down here to reset Essential Classic. So you might have to go back into it, back up to Window, Workspace, and reset it. That way everything kind of lays out just like we want it to. Okay. So now let's kind of talk about the main areas of it. So you have your basic areas up top. Now, just like with all Adobe programs, everything that's in a panel, you can find through one of these tabs as well as finding the actual panel itself. Okay. Left-hand side, this is going to be your toolbar. Remember that the option panel can sometimes change based on, let me close this, sorry. There we go. Based on what you're using, sometimes it'll change across the option panel. In Illustrator, it changes over here in your properties panel. So you want to make sure you always have this properties panel open. Okay, so these are your toolbars. You have your color options right here, your fill and your stroke. And also, I always get this question a lot too. If you want to, depending on the size of your screen, you can go single or double. I usually keep mine on double just because I'm working on a laptop. And sometimes with the resolution of laptops, it can like cut you weird and then you lose the bottom half of your toolbar. Okay. On the right-hand side, you're going to see your panels bar. These are any extra panels that you want to use. In the Essentials Classic, it gives us a set of panels. Now, whenever you click on them, they do just kind of fly out and then you can fly them back in so you can see them at a glance. You can also take these. So if I wanted like this comment one, I could take it and I could detach it and then I can bring it back over and reattach it. Then you have your properties panel here and you have libraries. Libraries is a good storage place if you're working with something that you're going to have to use over and over. I use it a lot for little vector clip arts if I have to use it a lot in a project I'm working on, or I use it for my saving specific colors sometimes so I can have easy access to them. Okay, properties. Again, you have the little double arrows up here that you can open and close to see things more or see them less. And if you ever knock out one of your panels and you can't figure out how to get it back, you can do one of two things. Either if you're working in a set workspace like we are, you can just go back to workspace. So Window, Workspace, and reset it, and it'll bring it back. Or you can come down here and find whichever the panels that you want to open. So if you're working in something and you know you want the, let's say, symbols, symbols panel, you can just click on it and it'll pop it open for you. Okay. Okay, so let's start looking at the different things that I have on here with your toolbar. So the first thing you need to know is that there's two different selection arrows up here. So the selection tool right here, this is your regular selection tool. That means you're going to be able to select something and be able to move it. Okay. The direct selection tool we're going to talk about more as we get into this project, but let me zoom in on this just to kind of show you. When you're working with your selection tool, it's going to put a bounding box over what you selected. This entire bird is grouped together, so it put a bounding box all the way around it. These little points are called anchor points right here. There's 3 across the top, 2 on the sides, and 3 across the bottom. You also have a center point right here. Okay. The other selection arrow is your direct selection tool, and this is going to let it break it down by an individual anchor point. So if you select it and you were to double click on something, now you can see I'm selected on that anchor point. Okay. As you continue working in Illustrator, you'll be using the direct selection more. Let me zoom back out. Actually, I'm going to go back up. Now, there's a couple different ways you can scroll to get to whatever page you want, or the easier way is to come down here and you're going to do your drop down, and I'm going to click on one. You can see my one is right there. Okay, so art and line, or line and arc, I'm sorry, and pen and curvature tools. So these are going to be your basic drawing tools. If for some reason you get like off center a little bit and you want to go back to center, you just control 0 or command 0 if you're on a Mac, and you're going to be able to go back to that page. Okay, right in the center of your screen. So let's talk about these tools. So the line and the arc tool are very basic tools. They are located right here. And remember, if you click and hold on the tool, it will pop it up. The line segment tool simply does that. It draws you a line segment. You just click and drag. If you press and hold shift, it'll make it a straight line. Now, as you can see, I have no color to this. So right up here, and you can get to your fills and strokes in 3 different places. You can get to them here, here, as well as your properties panel. I'm going to come up here for right now just to show you the difference. Whenever you're working in a project like this, it will give you a set of basics. So these are just basic swatches we can work with for right now. So this is your fill and this is your stroke. Since we're drawing a line, we simply need a stroke over it. So we're going to do the drop down right here, and you can pick any color. I'm going to pick black just to be easy. You can also right here change your thickness if you want to be able to see it a little bit better. So I'll go up to like a 3. Okay, so a line segment is simply that. It makes a segment of a line. Your next one is going to be your arc tool. And what it does is it allows you to simply draw an arc by clicking and dragging. Now, the biggest tool that you're going to use in Photoshop and Illustrator, well, I'm sorry, in Illustrator more, but you can use in Photoshop as well, is the pen tool. The pen tool is one of those tools that a lot of people struggle with when they first start using it, but I'm telling you to stick with it because it will end up being your favorite tool in this program. So the pen tool is right here. It looks like a little fountain pen. And if you click and hold on it, you can see you can add anchor points. So if you draw something and then decide later that you want to make a change to it, you can add an anchor point. You can also delete an anchor point. You can also adjust the anchor point. So you could turn it from a sharp anchor into a curved anchor. Okay, so we're just going to grab the pen tool. And first thing I want you to do is you're going to click on the left and you're going to let go of the mouse or of the touchpad that you're using. Now you're probably wondering why I'm being very specific about that, but it's very it's if you drag, you start creating curves. So by not dragging, I'm simply moving my mouse to the right hand side. I have nothing pressed, and then I click again and I let go again, and I click again and let go, and I click and I let go. Now you can see I've made a Z, but I want this little tail to go away. I don't want to connect it into a shape. I want to leave it as a line. Then you simply hit the escape key. Now, if you're drawing a shape, so let's say we're going to draw kind of a rectangle-y kind of shape. If I go right back to that first point, you can see my cursor gets a little circle after it. That means I'm closing that in and it will stop itself. Okay. So if you enclose something, it closes itself. If you don't, you press escape. Now to drawing a curve. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to do kind of like a backwards S. So I'm going to click, but this time I'm going to go down as a zigzag, and I'm going to click and don't let go. You're just going to simply drag down. and you can make the curve to the extent you want. Now, what it does is it automatically tells you what your second curve is going to be, which is fine in some cases. Some cases it's correct. And it does if you're trying to make something symmetrical. It's really nice because it will give you that option to make it symmetrical. But after you make a second curve, it always goes back to a straight line. So if you want to curve again, you have to click and drag again. Now, what happens if I don't want this to be a curve? Now I want a straight line. I press and hold Alt or Option, depending on what type of computer you're on, and I click on that last anchor point that I just made. It now resets it to be a straight line again. Okay, so to create a curve, you're just going to click and drag left, right, up, down. And to create, to unlock that and make it back into a straight line, it's Alt or Option on the last anchor point and click, and then escape to let go. Now, the other tool that they have on here is the curvature tool. Curvature tool allows you to create and edit curved and straight lines easily. I will tell you, this tool does take a little bit of work as well. It doesn't always do exactly what you want, and you can switch back and forth from the pen to the curvature tool whenever you want. But I just want you to kind of play with it and see how it works for you. And then again, when you're done, you hit escape. Okay. If you have any questions about line or arcs or pen or curvature, feel free to shoot me an email or ask me during class. Now we're going to scroll over to the next one and we're going to talk about type. Now, type is, or Illustrator is made for type. Whoops, I jumped back to the wrong screen. Go back to type. Okay. So it is made for this program. So what you're going to do is select your type tool up here. And if you hover over it and press on it, you can find all the options that you can do. So there's the type tool. It works just like the normal type tool. There's two ways of using it. You can, one, just take it on your page and click and begin to type. That's if you're not in a confined area. That's the one that works the best. If you're designing a poster and you know you have to stay within like a certain dimension, you can create and drag, and then that will force you into it. Now just know what it's putting into the box and what it pops up when you first click is just filler text. You can completely change it. You can leave it there till you're ready to use it. You then have the area type tool. So if you were to make a shape, it will fill in that shape. So let's go right down here, the tool below it, and we'll just do a star tool. And you're going to click and just drag a star. Then you would select that type on a, that area type tool and click on its edge, and it's going to fill it in for you. Now I'm going to come back over to the last page that we just did, and I'm going to show you the next tool, which is type on a path tool. And what that allows you to do is click right on a path that you've created, any path, and it'll fill the type in for you. This comes in super handy if you know that you have to fit it like a flowing motion. You have a very specific area to fit it into. Okay. You then have the vertical type tool, which allows you to type down. You have the vertical area type tool, and you have the vertical type on a path tool that just allows the type to go vertically. Okay, and then you have the touch type tool that works with the touch pads. Okay, so you got type. Now, just like in all programs, there is going to be the option to change your fonts. So over here on your on your right hand side in your properties panel, if you're on the text tool, it's going to give you your character panel and your paragraph panel, which come in very handy. The more options are right here at the three little dots, and this is where it's going to give you even more options to make adjustments to your font itself. Okay. If you want to know more about fonts, you can always go to Adobe Fonts and be able to see a lot more. We also talk about fonts in all of my design classes. Next, I'm going to scroll over. This is where we're going to talk about profiles and arrowheads. So I'm going to go up here to my selection tool, which is the black arrow, and I'm going to click on the with profile too. Now, know that this is called a path. So anytime you draw a line or you have a line, it's called a path. With this, you're going to see that you have, well, you can change the different profiles, you can change the thickness. The thing you need to know with this is whenever you have something selected, if it's not a fill, if it's a stroke, you're going to get this information right here on your properties panel. So with fill, you'll notice there's a box and you can change that box color. So if you had like a circle and you wanted the inside of the circle to be a color, you would simply click on this fill and you can choose a color from swatches, or you can change it over to this one as well, and use the mixer. Okay. And if you click on the color on your toolbar, you can actually have a color picker. So there's 3 different ways to really pick those colors. The next one down is the stroke, and you'll notice that the stroke has a color box next to it as well, but under the word stroke are these little dots. And then next to it is where the weight is. So you can like change your weight to make it thicker or thinner. But the big thing is that because there's little dots underneath it, you can click on it and it gives you a pop-up panel. Now this is going to allow you to change your weight in here. You can also change your caps. And so like the first cap that it has right here is called a butt cap. You'll notice that the color ends right here where my line ends. So right where my path ends is where it ends. So it's called a butt cap. The next one is a rounded cap. And you'll notice when I clicked it, it now rounds out from the path. And then here's your last one. This is the projecting cap. And if you click on it, you'll notice that it ends past. So whatever the width is on the side, it's going to put on the end as well. You do have, I'm going to go back to my butt right here. You do have corners that you can change. So if you're working on something like the square, which I'll click on it so you can see what I'm doing. You have the first one that's going to give you the miter. That's going to give you the nice sharp edge. You have the curved around it. You see it curves off my edges, make them less sharp. And then you have this one here that's going to give it a flat edge. Okay, kind of an angle. Align strokes, I'm going to stay on the square to show you what this one does. So right now you can see this is center. So the path goes right down the center and it gives color on both sides of it. It gives a stroke to both sides. You have the inside stroke. You'll now notice that the path's along the outside, the color's on the inside, and then you have an outside. So then the stroke's on the outside of the path. You do also have options to create dash lines, which there is in our, there's a handout that I give you, and I also put in your resources. You can create dashes. So if you click on this, you can see depending on what you set your numbers at, it'll create dash lines. You can change the caps, you can change the spacing, you can change all kinds of stuff with this. But we're going to come back up here to this one right here and do with profile and click on this. And you'll see profiles at the bottom. And we're going to change the profile to number 2, and they go in order, uniformed, and then 1, 2. And if you want to change your weight to kind of see what it does to it, you can do that as well. And then we'll change the second one. Click on the second one. And we're going to change it to 5. So again, just click on stroke, come down to 5, change it. But what's kind of cool is you can also do this with shapes. So by doing this one, I can change it to 6. And you can see it's kind of thick up here and thin up here, but I wanted it to maybe be the opposite way. I can flip it down here. Okay, so you can play with it as well down here, and you can also, you know, play with your corners if you wanted to. Okay, so you can do a lot of different things with those. Now, the next one, these 2 lines here are going to be arrowheads. These are in the same spot, so if you go to your stroke, you'll see arrowheads right here, and there's a whole bunch of these. So you can do left side, right side. I'm going to go down and find arrow 6. So it gives it a nice fat little arrowhead. And then on the right-hand side, I'm going to go down and do 31. And again, you can see right here, you can flip them. You can also align them. So if you want, like we did with the caps up here, do you want it to end with the end of the line, or do you want it to protrude past it? And then you can also scale these. So if you need it like your arrowhead to be bigger or smaller, you can do that as well. Okay, and for the second one, come on. Okay, I'm going to click on the word stroke again. This time I'm going to go down to 33. You'll notice that the arrowheads start getting a little sillier, a little bit more fun. So you have the regular arrows, but then you also have like scissors, you have pointing fingers. You have this little like star thing down here. So you can change it. And then this one I did 39. So that's the little boom. Okay. Now we're going to go down a row and over a row so we can take a look. Okay, so the shape tool is going to be right over here. It's about the, what, fourth, fifth tool down. And let's talk through each of these. So the first one is a rectangle. You simply draw a rectangle, click and drag, or you can hold shift and click and drag and it'll create a square. But you can also just select the tool and then double click on the paper and you know that you need a square that's 1 inch by 1 inch. Oops, didn't change it. 1 IN by 1 IN and hit OK and it'll make it for me. Same thing, you have the rounded rectangle tool, basically works exactly the same way. You have the ellipse tool, works the same way, but now you're working with ovals. And if you press and hold shift, you can get a circle. And again, if you double click, you can type in a size and it'll make it for you. The polygon tool. So here's the ones that start to become a little bit more fun. If you click and drag, it's going to create you a polygon, a multi-sided shape. Okay, you will notice too in some of these shapes, if you'll see these little circles or bullseye, those allow you to round edges. So like on this one, if I wanted to, I could round the edge, make them harder. Okay. The nice thing about this one though is, again, you can double click, but on this, you can not only change the radius, the size of it, but you can also change how many sides you want. So if you wanted a 15 sided polygon, you can change it to 15, hit OK, and it makes 115. Now remember, when you talk about polygons, the more points you give it, the more it's going to look like a circle, because that's what a circle is a bunch of points right next to each other. You also can, with the polygon tool or with the star tool, you click the star tool, whoops, click the drag, it'll make a star. If you double click, it'll allow you to pick the radius, but it'll also allow you to pick a points. And this is where you can make your triangles. Okay, or you can make like a crazy star. Okay. And the last one on here, I just kind of show people for fun. I've never used it. I'm sure there are good uses for it, especially if you're creating something that has to have like that highlight shine off of it. But it's the flare tool. And when you click it, it gives you a whole bunch of options. You can change its diameter, you can change its opacity, its brightness, its rays, its rings, its halos, all of that. And anytime you get these pop-up boxes, just notice down here on the left-hand side, it's going to give you a preview and you click OK, and there's a preview for you. Now, the second thing that says on here is duplicate. So what I'm going to show you is I'm going to grab one of my shapes, and an easy way to duplicate a shape is you press and hold Alt or Option, depending on a computer, a PC or Mac, and then you click and you drag, and you can create a duplicate. Now, the other thing that you can do with this, if you press and hold Alt and Shift, oops, Alt and Shift, Alt, click and Shift maybe. Yeah, Alt, click and hold and Shift and drag. It will allow you to align them. So you don't have to worry about whether or not your spacing is getting off. You can just align them right next to each other. Okay, next page over. This is where you're going to find your brushes. And yes, I know we're going through this very quickly, but these are all things you have to learn by just using them. And so while you're doing your lessons or any tutorials, then you'll be able to practice these things. This is more to show you what it can do. Okay, the next one is brushes. So if I click on this first one right here, if I wanted to create a brush, there are basic brushes preset in here. So on your panel bar over here, you'll see brushes. And if you give it a little pop out, you can also come down to like the bottom little bar down here and you can drag so you can see more, which comes in very handy. You can do that with any of your panels. You'll see some of these basic, like there's a basic line. This one's called charcoal. But this one right here that says 3.0, this is your cat tongue. And you can click on it and it's going to give you a cat tongue brush. Okay, the next one right here, this is, we're going to use your brush library. And if you go onto your panel for brushes, and it's also in some of the different panels. So Symbols has one, Swatches has one. Oops, I kicked myself out of it. But right here is the brush library because we're in the brush panel. If you're in the swatches, here's the swatches library. Okay. So in the brush panel, we're going to come down to the library and you're going to see all these presets. What we're wanting to go under is the image brush right there. And you click on it, it's going to give you this little pop-up. And here are some of the presets that they have. So I need to make sure I have that selected again. But you can do like a daisy, you can do a leather. I have written on here barbed wire, so there it is. You have like a telephone one, telephone wire, all these different things. Okay. So we're going to stick there. And you can go ahead and leave this open because the other ones will pop up on it as we go. Now on decorative, this one here, we're going to come over again, library, and do decorative, and we're going to do scatter. And, I have hearts, but if you wanted to do a star, you could do stars. Okay, and you can make adjustments to how much they scatter, just to know that they're here. Okay, let's do the border. And I will say, I know that I named this wrong and I need to fix it. So I will do that as well before I post this so that anybody can find it. So they moved it, they changed the name of it. And if you come down here to borders, it's now called Indigenous. If you're looking for the same one that I'm using. So Indigenous, and then there's Celtic right here. Okay, but you can find bamboo, African, all kinds of different types of borders. Okay, now one thing that I will tell you that once you use the type on a path or the type in a shape, that actual shape or path will become a path for the type. So you would lose it. So if you wanted to create, let's say type on a path and have a shape or design behind it, what you're going to do is alter option and like make a copy of it. Okay, so let's go ahead and make a copy, alter option, drag it down. Then I'm going to select that original one. And what I'm going to do is come up to my library and I'm going to do, I think it was under decorative. There it is. It's under decorative. And I'm going to do the banners and seals. Okay. And it'll give me all these options. Now, these are really cool if you have to make something like an award for somebody or a certificate for somebody. So you can select it and it's going to curve it to that shape. But we couldn't go back and add text to it. So if we wanted to, we could come over here and do the type on a path and do it on this one. So I'm going to click over a little bit because I kind of want it centered. And I'm going to type in, great job. Okay. Then I could actually pull this up and it would fit to the banner shape. Okay. So it'd give it that curve. And, you could always use your type tool and make it bigger and curve it. And then you could, adjust it so that it fits in there, but it helps with that having that original curve. Okay. Now I'm going to come up here and I'm going to close this panel right here. I'm just going to make this one go away with the little arrows. And we'll do the pencil and shaper tool. I don't talk about these a whole lot just because of the fact that a pencil tool is right here under your shaper tool. A pencil tool works just like writing with a pencil. This is great if you're using a stylus, if you're on a laptop, you want to create, a design. It's just more like drawing like with a pencil. Now, it does have the shaper tool which in here as well, which is kind of nice because let's say you're not really good at drawing, but you want to create a triangle or a square or a circle, and you're just kind of doing it freehand. It does do some of the polygons, but it depends on how good you are at drawing the polygons. It can do a star, but you have to draw a star perfectly for it to be able to read it. So this is more for these basic shapes. And that's the shaper tool. Now I'm going to come back over. I'm going to go down one more. Okay, let's talk about transformations. Okay, so transformations, you can do these a lot of different ways. This is just one of the ways that's easy to do it using the toolbar. So I'm going to select my first owl and I want to scale my owl. So I'm going to come over and on my tools, there's the scale tool right here. It's a square and an arrow. And what you can do is you can use it on here, or you can just transform too if you want to scale, freehand scale. But if you use this and you double click, then you can tell it to stay uniformed at 30% and hit tab. And again, remember, preview down here will allow you to see it. But what's nice about this is maybe I wanted a mama owl and a baby owl. So I could just hit copy and then use my selection tool and drag him over. And I didn't lose my original owl. I just created a copy of it at the 30% scale. I'm going to do the same thing with reflect. And over here, there's a tool. There's the rotate tool and the reflect tool right here together. With the reflect tool, double click on it, and you can flip them horizontally. You can flip them vertically. You can flip them at an angle. And again, you can hit copy. And now you have a little bird that's dancing. Or we'll do the rotate one. Again, use the selection tool and select them. Come over here, grab your rotate tool, double click it. It looks like a arrow circle. And then you can tell it what angle you want it to go to. And again, you can hit OK and it'll just rotate it, or I can hit copy and you can see creates a copy of what we just did. And the skewer tool is now called the shear tool. And I will change that before I post this document. But if you click on him and you come in here and you do the shear tool, you can shear it. This comes in super handy if you need to do a drop shadow of something. You can copy it, and then you could put this behind and it would look like a drop shadow. You can darken it, do those type of things. Okay, so let's talk about rotating using the appearance panel. We're going to use the effects panel, and so I'm going to select the first one. I'm going to go to effect, distort and transform, and transform. And it's going to give me this nice big pop-up panel. Scale, we're going to keep the scale the same. I'm going to do, we're going to change the angle to, let's say, 20. And I'll hit tab and you can see him move a little bit. You'll notice right here, this little chain link fence, this is what we're basing it off of. So I want this center one chosen because I'm going to rotate it around this center spot right here. And then I'm going to do 25 copies. Okay, and hit OK. And now you'll see you have a spinning bird. But you can also do it a different way. And what I'm going to show you another way of doing this. So if maybe you want a spiral kind of effect with him selected, I'll come up to effect. And I know it says apply transform right here. If you do this, it's going to send you right back to this effect. So if you wanted to duplicate it, you could just duplicate it right there and not have to remember the numbers you chose. But I'm going to go back to distort and transform and transform. And I'm going to change my scale to go down to like, let's go 75%. And I do have my chain right here. So this is going to restrain it so that they'll both be the same. And for move, I'm going to do just like 5 pixels. And we'll go back to that same angle of 20. And this time I want to put it on the bottom corner. And I'm going to change this to 25. Actually, you know what? Let's stay center and see what it does. And hit OK. So you can see it a little bit back in there, but I'm not wild about it. So Control Z will go backwards one step. Now I can go back up to Effect, Distort and Transform and Transform. And I'm going to change it to this bottom angle right here. So let's see, we did 75 and 75. Whoops. 75%. And I'll do 10 right here. Change my angle to 20. And my copies to 25. And then I changed it to this corner right here. And you can see preview of it and see it starting. So maybe we want 100 copies. Okay. Or you can adjust it so that it goes bigger. There we go. We'll do 93 and vertical 10 and 10. There we go. So 93%, 10 and 10, 20 angle, copies at 100, but I put it on the bottom corner. So now it's causing it to spiral out of control. Gradients. The great thing with gradients is in this program, you can create gradients a couple different ways. There are preset gradients. You can create your own gradients, and you can do a lot with these. You can change colors. What a gradient is, I'm going to go ahead and select this. Whoops, come on. There we go. And I'm going to come over to fill, and right here, the little gradient swatch library. You can go to gradients and you can find anything you want. So let's say we want to do, let's do seasons. And I'll pick one that I just think is pretty. I think this one's kind of pretty. It's an autumn multicolor. And I'll click on it and you can see that it's in here. Now you can create, like I said, you can create your own gradients or you can adjust the ones that you have. So this gradient tool right here will give you the layout. And like, I personally don't like this kind of green over on the side. So I can click on that circle and I can delete it. Now I no longer have the green. Also, there's a very hard yellow line here. If I wanted to soften it, I could kind of move my colors around. Okay, kind of adjust how it is. You can also mess with the opacity. So maybe, you know, this yellow is a little too hard. I can play with my opacity on it a little bit. Okay, you can also change these colors. So maybe this one right here is not quite the color I want. I can double click on it and I can come in here and I can add a whole different color, or I can just adjust the color I have slightly. You can also add one. So just by clicking right here, I could click over here and double click and then say I wanted to add a blue. Okay, so you can do a lot with these. There are different types of gradients as well. This one's called a linear. There is also, and I'll select this one right here, there is a linear, there's a radial that you can use. So that's another type of gradient. And then there's a freeform one or a kind of a diamond-y shape one too. So you can pick whatever one you want. Gradients can be used either as a fill, or you could change it to be the stroke. This is really nice when you're working with something, you're trying to make it look like metal. You can make that gradient have that little bit of shine around the edge, and it'll make it kind of look like it's a little bit more three-dimensional. Okay, last one. Let's take a look at this one. This is fills and strokes, so how your fills and strokes work. So fill is going to be the color that goes inside of your path, and stroke is going to be the path itself. You can have either of them with you can have no stroke, you can have no fill. If you have none of either, then you're going to have the problem that you can't see something. So you're going to want one or the other usually. And you can change them right here. So like on this one, if I wanted to make it have no stroke, I could do that. Or if I wanted to make it have no fill, you can also flip them and you can reset back to black and white. Now, one thing I will tell you that people have a hard time understanding sometimes, if you're on something like this one right here, let's say I had no fill in it, then if I tried to select it just by clicking on it, I'm clicking on nothing. So I'm not selecting it. I would have to click on the path itself, or I'd have to click and drag over the whole thing to get it to select. But if it has a fill, like this one has a black fill, I can simply click on the black fill. There's something in there. Okay, so kind of think of it kind of like I always use it, just the description of like a cookie cutter. So if you have a cookie cutter and you just hold it up, it's metal or plastic around the outside and there's nothing inside of it, then you would be able to put your hand through it. There's nothing to select. But if you actually cut a cookie cutter, cut a cookie with a cookie cutter and you held it up and the cookie was still inside of it, that would be your fill. Okay. So just go through these and you can kind of play with them. So this one's like a red fill. So I'm going to select it, come over here and I'll pick a basic red. And then for my stroke, it says blue. And then I can change my weight to 2. This one has a pattern fill. So up here under fill, again, you would go to your library and go to patterns and you can choose basic, decorative, nature. I always do nature just because they have some animal skin ones in here and they're kind of funny. So I could do a zebra and then it says no stroke. So I would just click and make sure my stroke's in front and do no stroke. And then this one is a gradient. I'm going to pull this down here so I can see what I'm doing. A gradient fill. Now I will tell you when it comes to patterns and or fills and strokes, they can be a little touchy. So if I click on my fill and I do a gradient, I still have my seasons open over here. I'll just use one of my seasons. Oops, I did it backwards. See, like I said, you have to make sure these are in the right order over here to make them work correctly. And then if I go to stroke, make sure my stroke's in the front and I want to do a pattern and I could do that. And now I can up the size. Okay. I'm going to close that just so I can see what I'm doing. Again, with strokes. So stroke color, it's black. We want the weight to be 8. And then by clicking on the word stroke, remember that dash line I talked about earlier, you can click dash line, make sure it says 12, and you have a dash line. Okay, next one, we're going to change the, stroke to pink. And we want it at 20. Click the word stroke, and then we change the caps to rounded caps, and you can see you have a nice rounded cap. And one more to go. We're going to change our square to fill to yellow, stroke color to green, change the weight to 5. And then we're going to do rounded corners. So click on the word stroke and do the rounded corners. And there you go. Okay, so that was just kind of to get you guys a chance to be able to see everything. And I'll come up here to view. And I will fit all in Windows so you can see everything we just did. Now, if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Otherwise, these are all things that you'll be working with, and it's going to take you practicing and using them over and over again to fully understand them. So, yeah, have fun kind of playing with this and practicing with it and just trying out some of the different things. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, have fun with Illustrator.